Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm James, continuing on with my Balsa USA Stingray 120 build. Okay, well in this video I'm going to be doing two things that I've been looking forward to doing. One of them is I'm going to be installing the landing gear, which is the main gear up here in the front, and then the tail gear in the back. And then the other thing I'm going to be doing in the video is installing the wire bracing for the tail section. So let's start with the landing gear. So if you've been following this build, you may remember that a while back, sort of earlier on when I was constructing the fuselage, I installed the mounting plate for the main landing gear right here. It's now below the monocoque. And there's a plywood plate in here that I installed with T-nuts. And then you may also recall that I decided to go with, not to go with the actual landing gear from the kit. There's nothing wrong with the kit landing gear, just personal preference. I decided to go with a different route. So just to remind you, the landing gear that comes with the kit is this steel wire landing gear that you see here. There's two pieces. Obviously I taped it together because I wanted to save it, and it would be mounted in this hardwood block that you see also taped on here, and that hardwood block would go in here, and then the wire landing gear would attach to that. There's nothing wrong with that. Just for me though, personal preference again, I just didn't like the way it looked, so I went online and I purchased this sort of generic carbon fiber landing gear. Now the thing about this, and I posted it back on that video when I did the landing gear installation of the plate up here. The thing about this is it's generic, and if you're interested in getting one of these, you can just type in on the computer when you're doing a search, just look for carbon fiber landing gear and just put in the size of your plane. Like my search was carbon fiber for 120 size airplane, or maybe 20 cc. And what you'll find is there's going to be several sort of sites that come up which provide this generic landing gear. Usually it shows you the different sizes, so you can just kind of choose what size you need and kind of look at the measurements. So like I said, it's sort of a non-brand landing gear, and I think a lot of these are basically coming out of China. Nothing wrong with that. They seem to be pretty well made, and I think like I've noted when I was doing my research on this, when I was buying it, a lot of people are using these, so I'm going to give it a try. I think it's going to work fine. So that's what I'm going to be using here. And I already drilled the holes. You may remember that. I already drilled the holes here, and it's just going to be mounted right up in here like this. And I think that's going to look pretty nice. So the tail gear that they give you in the kit, again, there's nothing wrong with it, and it would work fine. But here it is. It's just basically this little bracket that you would attach to the tail, at the tail section. And it's just a little nylon or plastic tail bracket that you would screw in. You have to make a little bit of a wedge, a wood wedge, in order to mount it, because the angle between the bottom of the plane and then the axis of the rudder hinge line is not at 90 degrees. So because of that, what would happen is the landing gear, if you mounted it straight on the plane itself, the landing gear would be sort of like this, kind of like, if I can show it like this, but the wire would have to be like this. That bend won't work. So you'd have to actually put a piece of, like a wedge of wood, to sort of get it all to line up. And actually, let me show you a picture real quick since I'm talking about it. It may be hard to describe. Let's see it here. Yeah, so right here, you can kind of see what you'd have to do is you'd have to make this little wood wedge in order to get it to, if you can look at this picture here, it's kind of a hard picture to see. In order to get it to line up correctly, you'd have to put that wood wedge in between the tail, on the bottom of the tail, and the actual mounting bracket for the tail gear. Again, I just didn't really like that, so I went with a different setup. So hopefully you can kind of see that in there. So I've seen this sort of makeup on other planes. In fact, I think the Smoothie that I built, the Balsa USA Smoothie that I built earlier, had a similar sort of setup, which I didn't. Again, I used a different tail wheel setup for that. But hopefully that makes sense. All right, so like always, went online and did some searching around, and I found another generic tail wheel bracket. And you know, you can go to a lot of hobby shops online to find tail wheel brackets, but I found this one. I'm going to put on I'll put on the screen the actual company that I got it from. It's sort of, again, another no name or no brand name wheel bracket, and this one I got from a company in Florida. It's sort of like a surplus supply house or something. It's kind of a strange thing. It's not really a hobby shop. There's some kind of a supplier, but I'll put that on the screen so you can see that if you're interested in it. It wasn't very expensive. It's aluminum. So here's the bracket that's going to be attaching it to the bottom of the plane. And because, like I said, that angle exists, all I have to do now is just bend the bracket itself to get everything to line up, and then I'll just screw this down onto the tail, into the tail. I'll just bend it until it's aligned properly with the axis of the rudder hinge line. So pretty simple. And again, this was cheap. The thing about this is I don't like this weird kind of like pink kind of purplish color, so I'm probably gonna paint it, probably just paint it black, or I may try to just maybe sand off this color. I don't know if that's a anodized on there, like a coating, or if it's actually within the metal itself. So I'll see. We'll take a look at it and kind of get that, because that's not going to work with this color scheme. Just not going to look good. So I'll just paint that black, or I'll strip it down and maybe it'll be silver underneath. We'll see about that. All right, and then I'll jump back to the main landing gear. So I purchased these are Dubrow axles, and you can see that they're just a solid steel axle, and they have the threaded kind of side to it, almost like a bolt. So I'm going to have to just drill out the main landing gear here for the right size, and these will be mounted right on there. Oops, right on there like that. No big deal. And then I purchased some, again, from eBay. This time I purchased some 4-inch wheels. These are Dubrow wheels here, so let's take a look at these guys. Yeah, so these are just these are big wheels by Dubrow, inflatable. I ended up with these. I like their sort of just low bounce wheels, but those are really expensive. You buy an individual, I forget the price of their kind of low bounce sort of standard 4-inch wheel. It's pretty darn expensive. I got these again on eBay, and because of where they came from, maybe I forget if that was somebody was just selling them, but I decided to give these a go. They're inflatable. I've never used these before. All right, so once I get finished with the landing gear, I'm going to move on to these wire braces. So they give you 4 wires, like piano wire, this hard kind of steel, stainless steel wire, and it's threaded on one end, and then it's solid on the other end. And there's going to be 4 of them, so it's going to mount. There's going to be 4, and it's going to support the tail surfaces here. And the way they mount on there is, if I can pull it out here, they give you these little nylon tabs. See those dudes? I'm going to drill it out, and there's going to be a hole here, a hole here, a hole here, and then on the bottom it's going to drill straight into the tail section. But these are going to be mounted on either side. For example, on the rudder, there's going to be one of these on each side, and they get sort of bent out a little bit. And what they're going to do is they're going to attach to the wires like any other type of way you'd set up like a control rod. You're going to use a clevis, and one side you screw on, which is going to be your adjustable side. And then after you get it sort of lined up where you think it's going to be, we're going to cut it, and it's going to attach to the other end using a soldered clevis, which is this guy right here. Now, I'm not an expert on soldering. I'm going to do the soldering, so I'll show you that when we get to it. So we'll see how that comes out. So I'm just going to have to cross my fingers on that one and see how it comes out. But so essentially what's going to happen, we're going to cut these to the right size, like I mentioned, and one will be screwed on, and then one will be soldered on, and then they're going to attach with those nylon tabs. Well, that's the plan. Let's get started. All right, so there you have it. We have the main landing gear attached up here in the front with these Dubro inflatable tires. These are going to be sort of interesting, but I don't know if they even need to be inflated. They're pretty stiff as they are. And then of course in the back here we have the tail gear, and the tail gear is controlled or connected to the rudder, which I'll kind of show you here. And then of course we have the wire braces for the tail section here that I installed. I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel on this build. It's been a long journey, but definitely getting closer to finishing it up. So like always, I appreciate you watching my channel, and we'll see you next time.